Сайн байцгаана уу хүн төлөвчтэй. Өнөөдөр манай де факто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Японы Токиогийн Их Сургуулийн профессор Takahara Akio оролцож байна.
Акио Такахара Токиогийн Их Сургуулийн Хууль зүйн улс төрийн дээд сургуулийн профессор. Тэрээр 1988 онд Сассексийн их сургуульд докторийн зэрэг хамгаалсан. Хонконг дахь Япон улсын ерөнхий консулын газар, Бээжин дахь Японы улсын элчин сайдын яам, Харвардын их сургууль, Бээжингийн их сургууль, Хятад судлалын Меркатор институт, GP Оперлины их сургууль, Риккиогийн их сургуульд багш, Австралийн үндэсний их сургуульд зочин багшаар ажиллаж байсан. Японы олон улсын харилцааны форумын хүнд судлаач. Японы олон улсын хамтын ажиллагааны байгууллага, тэрээр Японы олон улсын хамтын ажиллагааны байгууллага JICA, Огата Садакогийн инх тайван хөгжлийн судалгааны хүрээлэнгийн эрдэм шинжилгээний ахлах зөвлөхөөр ажиллаж байна. Takahara нь англи хэл дээр хувьсгалын дараах Хятадын цалингийн бодлого, орчин үеийн иргэний Япон-Хятадын харилцаа, Азийн орнууд ба Хятад улсын хоёр талын харилцааны харьцуулсан судалгааны тусгай дугаарын танилцуулга, орчин үеийн Зүүн Аз судлалын сэтгүүл нийтлэлүүдийг хэвлүүлжээ.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Since you have been in Mongolia for a few days, and you have met our Mongolian parliamentarians, you made a lecture to students at the National University of Mongolia, and you are a professional, you have been researching, studying the China relations with other countries, in particular Japan. Let's talk about a bit about modern China. Mm-hmm. First of all, in this current situation, we are becoming kind of multipolar world in a way. Mm-hmm. At least that's what the observers say now. China and Russia together as never before. Mm-hmm. So in that current situation, a country like Mongolia, which is in between them, mm-hmm. yet sharing more values with the third neighbor countries, mm-hmm. or more Western democracies in a way. How do you see in that situation, in Mongolia and its foreign policy?
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly the world order is in flux. We are waiting for the results of the presidential elections in the United States next year, which is going to be big for everybody. And as you just mentioned, China-Russia relations are very good now, but we are not sure about tomorrow or next year. You know, there are so many contradictions between China and Russia also. So in between those two countries, I fully understand the difficulty that Mongolia has been facing in the past and today and tomorrow, or how to survive and develop in between these two powers that cooperate and compete at the same time.
It's a quite delicate situation as we dependent almost 100% on Russia in terms of food, mm-hmm. energy, wheat, mm-hmm. etc. And China is almost fully 100% importer of our all goods. Mm-hmm. I mean, first of all, mining commodities. Mm-hmm. And yet we have, with both of them, strategic partnership agreement, mm-hmm. the highest possible cooperation level in between two countries. Mm-hmm. And yet it happens that we sometimes have not enough powers. Mm-hmm. With certain reasons it is cut off. Mm-hmm. At certain reasons China closed the border at times. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So not easy. Mm-hmm. So how do you see that in terms of future changes in the world, the war in Ukraine, and that Chinese relations with Taiwan now?
So I think diplomatically, Mongolia has been handling its diplomatic relations rather well, balancing all these powers. And I'm sure that's what you will continue to do in the future, not to put too many eggs in one basket, try to have a balanced relations with a lot of different powers. And also another point is, I was visiting Oman in the Middle East last week and was told that their oil will run out in 15 years' time. So what they're trying to do is to industrialize, to develop its own capacity to survive without depending too much on resources. So I would imagine that should be the fate of a resource-rich country like Mongolia too. So how you can develop your internal industries to become a strong nation, even without the resources, will be the foundation, will be the basis of your diplomacy in the future. So that's one point. And the other one, you mentioned Taiwan. We in this part of the world, the East Asian nations, all got much concerned, especially after Putin invaded Ukraine, that a similar thing could happen in East Asia, especially over Taiwan. My judgment as of today is that it's not going to happen in the near future. Why is that? Because it's not Xi Jinping's top priority. Xi Jinping's top priority is to maintain his regime, to maintain his power. So one day, if he judges that it will be beneficial for maintaining his power if he invaded Taiwan, then I think he will. But that's not today, that's not tomorrow.
So the intention to keep his power is not equivalent to attacking Taiwan?
No. Attacking Taiwan would be
why it
too
would
risky.
Be so difficult for him, or to give such a priority to his keeping the power? Why?
Because if there are hostilities breaking out over Taiwan, I think East Asian prosperity is all finished. The economies not only of China and Taiwan, but also of Japan's, Korea's, all done, all finished.
Why is that?
Because no one would like to carry their freight through that region. How many foreigners are living in Taiwan? How many Japanese? And if the Taiwanese decided to attack Shanghai, for example, it would be such a tragedy. It would be such a complete disaster. And Xi Jinping, I think, understands that. The risk is too high, and it's not easy to... If it's an invasion that will finish in one day, maybe the damage in that sense won't be that big, but certainly that's not going to happen. I mean, if the war lasts, if the damage of the war is big, then I think we are all done.
The general public opinion is, in case China attacks Taiwan, there will be American forces, which is military forces, which is a lot in the Asia-Pacific region, several hundreds almost. All of them will be involved, and it will be almost a war type of war. Is it?
Well, I think it depends on some factors. Like if it was a war that started because a Taiwanese political leader suddenly announced independence, or in which case we know that the mainlanders will have no choice but to attack. And in that kind of a situation, I don't think the Americans will go and help.
Is there any chance that any political power will have announcements?
I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay.
So in other cases, most likely the Americans will intervene, and the Chinese know that. So Xi Jinping will not take big risks.
Well, speaking about Xi Jinping, President Xi Jinping, domestic policy where dominant vector is to keep his power, and it's a one-party system, and the person is elected for the third term, and I understand his corruption fight had come to certain conclusions already, positive, negative, whatever, and the Chinese economy is not doing their best as it was before.
It's pretty bad now.
Yeah, how do you see the domestic situation of China?
I tend to identify two axes in Chinese politics. One is horizontal, that is high-level politics, or power struggle between the leaders. And on that level, Xi Jinping has almost conquered the scene. So he has ousted all his rival factions out of the Politburo, And despite some problems in his personnel appointment, still his solid power base is not shaken at the very top. That's my judgment as of today. But when it comes to the vertical axis, that is the relationship between the party and the masses, or Xi Jinping and the ordinary people. Now it's being shaken. A big factor is what you mentioned, the economic downturn, which is becoming very serious. All the Chinese friends that come and visit me in Tokyo say the same thing. The economy is in deep trouble. And they are looking for investment opportunities so that they can take their money outside the country and, if possible, their family members too. So that's one important factor. And the other is the effect of the zero COVID policy that was taken last year and which was suddenly cancelled without much preparation. And the people are becoming very suspicious about the regime and about the ability of Xi Jinping.
Now, plus there is an interesting experiment, I understand, happening in China, where each citizen is given a certain so-called social score up to 1,000, and one is to be optimal, normal citizen if you are above 600 or something. I don't know exactly the details, but however, it's kind of scanning every citizen in a way.
Yes.
Literally almost. Everywhere you go, you are scanned.
That's right.
So how do you find that part of the society?
It's a George Orwellian kind of a world that is coming to reality. And I think before the people accepted it, generally speaking, because of the tighter social control, the crime rate comes down, people obey traffic rules and things like that. So there are positive things that come along with that. But at the same time, that control is becoming tighter and tighter and tighter. And the epitome of that was the zero COVID policy. And now people are beginning to feel that it's too much.
This was the zero COVID policy, was the tipping point.
Yes, I should think so. I would think so.
On the other hand, because personal data security, safety is everybody's concern.
Yes.
And your private data or actions are not to be controlled by anybody, right? So in that sense, how long it will go?
Well, that's a $1 million question. But my sense is, having had a lot of conversations with my Chinese friends for many, many years, many people don't think that this regime will last forever. But no one knows when the transformation is going to start, what the process of change is going to be. Most people suspect it could become a very bloody one. And no one knows the final shape of the political transformation. So they don't want to think about it.
In many countries, that final point is coming from the economic point of view. It usually causes serious economic crisis, huge stagnation, zillions of inflation percent. And at that level, the background of all this tectonical changes in the economy is property. And in China, still a lot of state-owned enterprises, which are known that usually run with loss. If a private company goes with loss that long, it is bankrupt, right? State companies are not, which is also a concern here in Mongolia.
I see.
So in that sense, the very background, in Japan case, it's a private, large corporations. How is it now situation of a ratio between private property and public property or state-owned enterprises, private enterprises in China, and where the fault is moving towards?
That is a very interesting point, because in 1999, in my view, China went through a quiet revolution. That is, they changed their definition of socialism. by changing the definition of public ownership as the mainstay of the economy. Before that, they used to say private ownership assets should be the majority of the total social assets. But since 1999, they dropped that condition, and as long as the state owns the key sectors of the national economy, then we still have a public ownership system with public ownership as the mainstay. So that was a fundamental change in the definition of socialism. Had there been the Socialist Communist Party then, I don't think they would have allowed it. You know, it would be such a revisionist reinterpretation of the orthodox ideology. Anyway, that's what they did in 1999, the Chinese Communist Party. And now, as far as I know, I don't have the exact figures, but private property is bigger than public property. That's point number one. But point number two, after this transformation or a fundamental change in ideology, what happened was some state-owned enterprises became very successful. Why? Because they dominate certain sectors of the economy and started to gain oligopolistic or monopolistic huge profits. And other state-owned enterprises in other sectors, as you said, are having very big difficulties. So there is a division in those state-owned enterprises that don't do well and the state-owned enterprises that do so well. And there are a lot of families, people around the leadership of the state-owned enterprises with such a huge vested interest in the current system. And they don't want to reform their system at all, whereas there are more cool-headed economists and former prime minister, not the former prime minister, there was a prime minister called Wen Jiabao in the Hu Jintao days, who would argue that without reform, we are doomed. We should reform further, but there is the conservative camp with the vested interest always arguing
Exactly.
against that.
That's why there's a certain internal conflicts among state-owned enterprises. As you said, one is progressive, the other is more conservative. At which point there will be their fight came to their peak and collapse or further go together. What is an anomaly there?
So my way of categorizing these people is like this. On the one side, there are the reformists who are internationalists who tend to go for moderate foreign policy. And on the other side, there are the conservatives, nationalists, and who would take a hardline policy in external policies. And the one critical point, I think, was May 2019, when the Trump administration was negotiating with the Chinese counterparts on trade deals. But the trade deal was not only about trade, it was about China reforming their economic system so that the state-owned enterprises won't be given these subsidies that would distort the market competition and so on and so forth. And the document became 150 pages thick. They almost signed the document, both sides, but at the final moment, Xi Jinping said, no, I'm not going to sign. So I sensed this very intense tug of war between the two camps that I just described, and the conservatives won at the very end.
Is it not main reason why the economy start to be stagnating?
I should think so.
Okay, this is one trend. We don't know how much it will go. But the other trend, what the world was expecting, some say now it was a mistake, was expecting that the more China has a middle class with more income or growing bourgeoising society, there will be strong resistance to the one-party rule. And some Western observers say that it did not happen. Some say, no, still it will be happen. What is your take on that?
I tend to think that the Chinese Communist Party, in fact, expected that the growing middle class will support them will support them because they would think since the system is just right, therefore they were able to become a middle class, they were able to become richer. So they thought that it's the element of the stability in society. So that it was their policy to build this layer of the middle class in society. And up to now, I think the Communist Party has been right. They wanted to maintain the status quo. But as we just discussed, because of the zero COVID policy, because of the economic policy failures, economic downturn, the middle class is turning away now from the party.
Well, that's a substantial shift.
Yes, that's what's happening now, I think.
Okay. On the other hand, people start to have material freedom, let's say, the middle class. They have everything they had not before had. Now they have everything. I mean, they have good things now compared with, due to technology changes. China, middle class consumption is quite sophisticated in a way. And then it is not enough for a person just material freedom. A person needs at least a way of freedom to speak what they think, freedom of speech, and kind of gather together to create some interest group, which both are forbidden now. So how do you see that that case, when it will happen and how?
You know, the middle class gradually beginning to request more political say, political power. This is the modernization theory in political science. There's some truth to that, but I tend to think that it's not only the middle class that will ask for more freedom. Even the working class, even the peasants, yes, we can say they tend to listen more to party propaganda because of the lack of knowledge or because of lack of training. But if we look carefully into the previous cases of democratization in the Philippines, in Korea, in South Korea, in Thailand, and so on and so forth, it's often said that it's because of the middle class. Those locals even say because of the middle class, blah, blah, blah. But if we look into detail, it was the workers that led the demonstrations in Bangkok, for example, in 1992. So I'm rather skeptical these days as to, it's only the middle class. No, I don't really think so. The middle class could have a lot of resentment, but when things happen, I think the workers, the peasants, they will all stand up.
Or students who will start.
Yes.
So that's what the political spectrum we see in China. It's in a dynamics. It's hard to now forecast what exactly happens. And nevertheless, we have the reality that this is the super economic power, and we need to sell, we need to train, as Japan does now. You need to not only to compete with China, already competing in electronics and many industries, which you were more dominant as Japan, but now China is becoming dominant in terms of cell phone. It is not anymore Sony. It is more. I mean, at least for public, majority of public. Yet, you need to also cooperate. How to make that balance?
Yes, China is our neighbor to both Mongolia and Japan, and we have to coexist with China, even if China, it doesn't matter whether China was an angel or a demon, we have to coexist with China. So, and we are, as Mongolia is, as Japan is, cooperating with China every day. So let's not forget, there is both competition and cooperation. Especially for Japan, we have immediate security concerns because of their maritime advancement and their rising defense budget and so on and so forth. So we need to make a good balance between competing measures and cooperating measures.
one of the cases recently, a hot issue now, your Fukushima water case, where you have poured that water to the ocean. I mean, I understand it's gradually, I understand it's for years, so that you have a right dose to that. And China had forbidden all import from Japan, all fish products. How is it going on now?
Well, I think they are gradually toning down the propaganda they're doing internally. You know, a lot of Chinese tourists still come to Japan. Some have cancelled their visits, but a lot still come, and they eat Japanese fish. And, you know, if the fish is fished by a Japanese trawler, then we cannot export it to China. But in the same area, if it was a Chinese trawler that fished the fish, and they can still eat. So this is not scientific at all.
I know. So let all the fish eat only Chinese trawler.
Yes. So, you know, I think they chose a wrong question. If they wanted to pressure Japan for something, if they wanted to criticize Japan for something.
But however, is it groundless, the whole, say, accusation?
I'm not a scientist, so I have to believe in what the scientists say. But according to the scientists, you know, it's harmless. The word of the IAEA was that the effect of the radioactive material still left in the water on human beings and the environment is negligible.
So this accusation is negligible.
So we are not afraid of eating Japanese fish.
So you do eating?
We do.
Okay.
We eat a lot.
Yeah, I know. Because you eat a lot fish products, people live longer there.
Perhaps. But we want to preserve the fishing resources too, and we are afraid that the Chinese fishermen fish too much. This is what the world is now understanding, you know.
Well, simply because there are so many people.
Yes, but they have to do it in a way that can preserve the resources. Otherwise, we won't be able to eat sushi.
And speaking about that, there is International Maritime Organization, which is a kind of regulating that quota for country, no?
Not effective.
Not effective.
I'm afraid. I was in Oman last week. They have a maritime security center. They can monitor all the fishing boats in the region. And the people there told me that a lot of illegal fishing done by the Chinese, not only coming into their exclusive economic zones, but another problem is that they
international
use
water?
International water, but the measure, how do you call it? The fishing measure is an illegal one that they take all, which will deplete the fishing resources.
Do they explode the fish or the water and to kill all fishes, or?
I don't know the exact method that they take, but people in the business are very much concerned that we should have more negotiation, we should have more dialogue.
Okay, finally a question around Mongolia. You have been to Mongolia for a few days. What is the main observation you think or you found? You met people, you traveled in the city, found the main number one issues for you looks like Mongolians face today?
You know, this is my second visit to Mongolia. My first visit was 30 years ago, in 1993.
Whoa, okay, so you can compare.
So from these two experiences, I must say, I'm afraid I have to say, as far as the people in Ulaanbaatar are concerned, I think the top priority issue is the traffic jam.
Traffic jam.
Yes.
And speaking about traffic jam, many are caused with cheap cars that Mongolians, I mean, average income or lower than average income family can afford buying from Japanese second-hand markets. As you have seen, it's mostly Prius.
Yes.
So more than half of the cars are Prius,
yes, I was surprised.
all right-handed, and plus because it's cheap relatively, everybody can afford. And now we the feeling is now every nomad has replaced their horse with a Prius.
Right.
So, looking at the bigger picture, what is it could be done? Is it a matter of stopping import, or it's a matter of restricting certain age of the cars, or what would be done better? Because you had also traffic jam in the 70s.
Yes. Our way was to dig a lot of metro lines, but I don't know if that's the best way here. I'm a complete layman in this area, so this is a wild thought of mine. But how about dispersing the people, meaning transferring certain functions of Ulaanbaatar as a city to a few other places, so that people won't concentrate too much on one small area?
They tried under the so-called satellite towns, cities, but it didn't work because mostly education inequality.
Okay.
People prefer to bring their kids to better schools, which is mostly private schools, expensive, in the center of the city. In spite of that, they are transporting early more. The most traffic is caused by this education differences.
I see.
Quality.
So I understand city function is not only one, but we have to have a comprehensive design for a new town to function well.
Okay.
So education should be a very important part of the plan, and also environment, also all these hygiene issues, industry, government functions. It has to be a very well planned plan to implement in a good way.
My final question is, in the current terms, with the relations in the relations to China and Russia, we are becoming more and more united now, and yet these two coalitions are completely different than the Western democracies, and this kind of circles, and the bigger circles, they may take Mongolia down the bottom, some of them anyhow, some of them it may. So what would be your advice as an international analyst, international relations analyst, to Mongolians?
I would say teach the children the importance of democracy, importance of rule of law, because it's so precious. Now you have it, you should treasure it. People in China, a country that I know more about, the Chinese people have never experienced democracy, so they don't know democracy. But there's one thing that they know. They hate the abuse of power by the power holders. So how do you stop that? How do you prevent the power holders from...
In the world, only democracy can
Only
stop
democracy. Check and balance of power.
Democracy and human rights.
Yes, so in my view, there could be a zigzag in history. However, eventually, even China will reach democracy. Eventually. You are there now. Treasure it.
Keep it in this way.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. За, хүн түзэгчтэй өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Хятадыг онцгойж судалж ирсэн Японы Токиогийн Их Сургуулийн профессор Акио Takahara оролцлоо. Баярлалаа.